Righto, today's little project, it's going to be pouring rain today, something like 200 mils over the next 24 hours where I live, so I'm hunkered down in the garage. I'm going to do a project that I've been putting off for months. This was an amplifier that came to me with the factory remote control, which is always a bonus, and it is an RX-V800. Let's power that one on. The display is quite dim, probably not much I can do about that. There will be a dimming function here, but let's just go to the problem that I know about, which is that if I use the volume, if you look at the volume there, it is beautiful and linear. But if I twist the volume knob, it's not too bad. Ah, there we go, it's skipping. So what does that tell you? Immediately it tells you, I'm twisting, nothing is happening, which tells me that the rotary encoder in here is stuffed. So all I think I need to do is pull it apart, clean out the rotary encoder, then I can test this, give it a bit of a blast and get rid of it. A little fold down flap there, A and B speakers, bass extension, blah blah blah. Basically it's a Dolby DTS processor amplifier. Alright, let's crack this open, have a go. Okay, so we've got the lid off and let's have a look inside. Got some weird twisted wires here. Oh, these are just sort of holding wires to keep things out of the way. There's another one there. Insulation's coming off the transformer. So neither here nor there. And what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take this front panel off. So got a couple of screws at the top here, a couple down the side, and let's get into it. There are also a couple on the underside here. So there are a couple of screws on the underside here that I had to take out, and hopefully, yeah, that just slides off. And you can see this is actually in pretty disgusting condition, full of little bits of fluff and God knows what. So that'll need a clean up. That is actually a machined aluminium faceplate, so it's actually going to clean up pretty well. That'll be nice. Got the front panel, and this is our rotary encoder in here, and I'm just going to basically have to pull out this panel on the inside here, and that will give me access to and also pull out undo all these screws, and it'll give me access to the control board. I may have to unbolt the chassis here and there and see what has to happen next. As always, it's like changing a spark plug through the exhaust pipe, getting into a rotary encoder, because they're sort of deep in the guts of the front panel. So the next job is to pull these little clips out, and these, you can just get your fingernails under these, like so, and then that just pulls out, and they're basically like a little, almost like a car clip. So, and then you've got the screws on each side, and that gives you access to the whole front panel. Need to fold this front panel down so I can get access in there. Now the screws on the underside of the chassis have all been taken out already, so this is the last one. So if I pop that out, hopefully, yeah, the whole front panel wiggles out. And one last screw hiding here. Now I've kind of got my fingers braced to catch this in case the whole thing plops forward. So basically it looks like this entire chassis is a bolt together chassis. So this is all loose now, and all I need to do is make sure that these power connectors come forward. I might need to desolder those, and we've got a ribbon cable there and a couple of ribbon cables down the bottom here. So if I can, I'm going to try and work so that I only have to unscrew these back screws here on this, holding this PCB on, and then I can get into the rotary encoder, which is tucked in behind. If I pull the volume knob off, the attenuator, as we like to say in posh world, you can just see that's held on by a threadlet there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 screws that came out of the back of this board, so if you're wondering, you need to do a head count of 7. There's little spring clips here. I was pushing those forward with my thumb, and hopefully this board should just pop out. So the first step is to undo that nut there, because that is securing that to the chassis. Spin that off, and then once you do that, pop those little clips out. You can see one there, and there's another one on the other side that's already come loose, and the whole inside board should come out. Pop those little clips, 1, 2, and that whole board and the front face comes forward. And critically, what we can see is our pesky little rotary encoder here. So usually these have got a couple of solid solder points at the back, and then the front comes off. So I'm going to have to work around. We've got 1, 2 large solder points that basically secure it, and then 1, 2, 3 points of the rotary encoder. So I've got to avoid all these. These are SMD resistors, or they're not quite SMDs, but they're micro resistors, 15th of a watt. And this is the bad boy that is problematic. And then that's the fluorescing display, which you can see the little vacuum tube there, the evacuation tube. That's the infrared receiver, and little micro switches there, SPDs. Now, if I'm careful, this front of this rotary encoder will just slide off. All I have to do is use this flat blade screwdriver to bend out each of these tabs in succession, but they're probably cast, so just see how that moves already, and that one moves already. So I'm just going to do that very, very carefully, and hopefully the whole front of the rotary encoder will just slide out towards me. So you brace the screwdriver off the casting of the rotary encoder. You don't want to break. If I break these castings off, then I've got to buy a whole new rotary encoder, which probably a 20-year-old amplifier would take it beyond economic repair. I'm happy to put my time into it, but not my dollars. Okay, so they're all bent back and out of the way, and one rotary encoder. That's actually looking pretty clean. I'm going to use some IPA, some isopropyl alcohol, just to clean up these contact tabs, and you can see the grooves. Like, this has been worn pretty heavily. So, and I'll also, you can see the contact tabs inside. Now, shouldn't forget which way this goes in. So that's why you take video or take photos, so you know which way these things go in. There is some friction here, and the friction is caused by grease on the shaft, so a bit of silicone grease. So you want that, because you want that nice resistance feel, but you do want the face of this to be nice and clean. So I'll get some IPA, a cotton tip, an earbud, ear thing, whatever you call them. Lost my powers of speech. And I'm also going to bend these little contact tabs out just a tiny bit so that they get better contact. Righto, so this is what I'm talking about. Earbud, some IPA. So let's get a little bit on it and we'll clean it up. You can see a bit of crap there, a bit of carbon, or I'm assuming it is. That's looking pretty clear. Often I've pulled one of these apart in the past and it was covered in grease. So this is not the case. But I am going to bend those pins back to get better contact. So all I really want to do is to very gently get a blade under here, just pull that forward. Here we go, and just get a little bit more tension or friction on the back of the pressure plate of the rotary encoder. And these are all covered in grease, so I'm just going to give them the lightest wipe down. See a fair bit of crap coming off the end there. It's about as good as I can do, I think. And now time to reassemble. Checking our previous footage that goes up. So I'm going to try and go from the top to the bottom, rather than going from, say, the bottom to the top. So if I go from the top to the bottom, it means that there'll be even pressure put. There's the pins won't be stressed. There we go, like that. Now while it's held in, reach across, get a pair of needle nose pliers, bend the bottom ones in, and similarly the top ones. So going to give that a bit of a twist just to see what the feel is like. It's a little bit loose, so I'm just going to put a bit of pressure down on those pins just to try and bend those in a bit. There we go, that feels a bit more like it did when it came out. Now if I wiggle it, that is pretty tight. Okay, reassemble. Alrighty, litmus test. Here's the remote. On she comes. Just get in there a little bit closer. Very frustrating that this display is so dim, but anyway. Oh ho ho, beautiful. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And then I can just override that with the remote. And that's got the same sort of linearity. So, job well done. That's absolutely perfect. I'll just use the knob again, the encoder. Now, I'm going to jump into the menu. I'm going to do a full review of this amp now that it's repaired. I'll reassemble it, and which is obviously just the reverse of what I did to disassemble and tear down. And I'll see if I can jump into the menu, improve the brightness of the fluorescing display, see if it's an amp worth keeping or not. The first step, put all these screws back in. So when you're putting this together, make sure that that little clip goes over the top, and then screws in the side there. Now that I've done the repair of the rotary encoder on this AV receiver RX-V800, this Yamaha beastie from the year 2000. So in 2000 you would have paid around about $1,000 for this 15 kilo monstrosity. Here we go, digital top height. Now a lot of the controls that you actually do need from basically day to day are in here, which is the tuning for AM and FM. We'll turn this on. Again, the display is quite dim, a bit hard to see with the reflection. So you do need access to these buttons more often than you might think. Mainly if you don't have the factory remote control. And I do have a remote control for this, which is an REB161, but I don't think that this is the factory remote control for this actual amplifier. It does operate all of the functions, but some of the menu functions seem to be a little bit clunky. Anyway, I'll battle on rewardless. So, what do you get with this amp? You get basically 5 by 100 watts into 8 ohms, which is absolutely more than you'll ever need. It's got coax, it's got digital optical. We'll just go around the back and we'll have a bit of a look. So, a bit of a mess because everything is hooked up. So you can see we've got some component, we've got composite, and we've got S-Video, which reflects the time that this was released. We've got a couple of digital optical outputs, and we've got a couple of optical inputs. So we've got SPDIF, and we've got coax down there. So 2 coax, 4 SPDIF in, and 2 SPDIF out. And annoyingly, what I've discovered is that this, at the moment, for example, is hooked up with the video output going into the input of my dodgy television, currently switched to DVD. But if you want to actually see volume or menu commands, I've actually got to switch that over and put that into the output. So it's designed really for televisions with component or S-Video, not with composite, if that makes sense. So what I'm saying is, if you have this set up to display a DVD output, for example, or a VCR, I've got an old school VCR here to show you that because that's time period, you won't actually see the volume control or the menu options from the amplifier unless you unplug this and plug it into that output there, which is really, really frustrating. So what this does is they try to set this up as a sort of a pseudo 6-channel amplifier. So it's got a false or a phantom rear channel. It does do tri-field processing. It's got Cinema DSP, it's got Dolby Surround Pro Logic, Dolby Digital Cinema processing, and apparently it's compatible with something called Panja and Crestron, which means nothing to me. So let's get a source happening. So again, Rotary Encoder still working beautifully. Bass and treble, quite effective. Nice feel to these knobs. I really like these knobs actually. 2 sets of speakers, which is great. So you can have B speakers, which are getting harder and harder to find. Bass extension, so call it a loudness control, which will be a 10 dB boost at around about 100 Hertz. And then if we switch our input to DVD, which is our DVD switched on the television, and press play, we then get the movie playing.
Can you play beautifully?
Okay, watching Shine. And then also if I swap over to VCR1, press play.
About to go through an amazing transformation.
So all the switching works really well. My main frustration with this is basically with the remote. As I said, this may not be the factory remote, so that could be part of the problem. But what I've discovered, it's got something called memory protect in the menu, and what I've discovered is that even if you power this off and power it off at the power point, you lose all of your memory presets. So I'll just switch that over to tuner. Preset tuning. So everything works fine. Turn the effect off here, which means I'm just straight into stereo mode. Bass and treble work in this mode. So it does everything that it says it does, but it's just extremely clunky. And I'll show you what I mean by the menus in a minute. So I'm just going to unplug that from the output of DVD and plug it into the monitor out, like so. And we get a blue screen. In a computer that would be blue screen of death, but if I adjust the volume, so that's when you start getting your display up on the monitor when you are plugged into the monitor output only of the output of the amplifier into the AV in of your television. Now if I try and go into the menu, press the menu button, it's in tuner mode, it's trying to hunt for presets. That's what I'm after. So it's just set up with 2 stereo speakers. There's no point on YouTube testing surround sound. So there's no YPAO, which came out a little bit later with Yamaha's, which is an automatic level assessment where it automatically tunes for your room size. In this case, you've got to set the tone up and you've got to do it all manually, which would be basically impossible. So you'd have to sit in your lounge chair, adjust each level individually. Now I can go through all of the levels there and adjust each of those individual levels, but it's really, really clunky. There's no automatic way of doing it. And I think it's pretty primitive and pretty basic. So I've got a couple of menus that I can access. I can set the speaker up, set the low frequency crossover, left right balance. Now IO assign and input rename, they're really important. What that means is that you can change the assignment of inputs for things like the coaxial, which you absolutely need to be able to do. So if you've got a coaxial input, you can change that from DVD or well, this is pre-Blu-ray or another source. So it's got a lot of functionality and things that you can adjust, but it's just very, very clunky. I'm not even sure what parameter initialize does. So if we keep going down to the 4th menu, we can go to speaker delay time. So that's like a digital delay between front and back speakers, which can be important, although it'd be clunky to set up. Okay, display set, press the right arrow. So that's just the display on the television, and the dimmer is the dimmer on the actual unit itself. So I'm just seeing if I can, we go, I can adjust that. So I'll just show you what that does when I'm actually at the face of the unit here, just to see if I can change. So that's almost, so that is as high as the display goes, and there is a problem with this display on this particular model, so that's as bright as the display goes. That's the amplifier. So when you can actually see the display, I've got no complaints with it. It's quite comprehensive. It's quite a large display. And you can see the inputs changing as I flick through the inputs. CD, phono, V auxiliary, VCR2, VCR1, satellite. So there's plenty of inputs. There's also plenty of sound fields here. So you can 70mm adventure, sci-fi, spectacle, mono movie, TV sports, 5-channel stereo, game, disco, rock concert, jazz club. There's plenty of, so it's already selecting that it's in Pro Logic mode, for example. So there's absolutely plenty of sound field processing here. The issues are that it won't hold radio stations when you turn the power off. You've got to reprogram them and reset them every single time. And the fact that you cannot enter the menu system at all without the factory remote control, which is just beyond useless. So I've actually got nothing to recommend this amplifier. It's got plenty of power, but pretty much everything has got plenty of power. Power is never the issue. It's all about the user experience. And even though this is pre-HDMI, there are so many amplifiers that are better than this. My own Denon, which is an AVR 2805, is so much easier to use and so much more capable with a far superior on-screen display, and it is exactly, this would have been a competitor to my Denon, but the Denon leaves this in the dust in every single respect. Alright guys, thanks for watching. If you see one of these for sale, I would leave it. This one was free, and even that was probably too much money. Alright, thanks for watching.